Lynn, we've got a couple of folks who have been standing by.
Oh, I know.
They're there, and I'm going to give you the honor of introducing them. Tell us a little bit about them, who they are. So, Lynn, the floor is yours. The microphone is yours.
Well, hi guys. So privileged to have you here. I'm just going to tell my personal experience. Ronald Simpson-Bey represents Just Leadership USA. Can I take these off?
If you want, sure. You won't hear
crazy
them, but you'll put them
feedback.
back
Well,
on.
it's just crazy feedback. I'm sorry. And that organization run by Glenn Martin, their goal is to reduce the prison population in half by 2030.
Wow.
And when we needed and asked for people to join Ross's amicus brief that and challenge that barbaric sentence that he was given, Glenn Martin and Just Leadership USA stepped up and joined the brief and gave a great argument. And so I'm so happy to have you here, Ronald, because, you know, it just means so much to me personally, and I really want people to know about your organization. And Jason, I met Jason at Freedom Fest personally, and he's spoken so eloquently about the criminal justice system, but he represents FreedomWorks, which is such a great organization. And so it's so great to have you here. Thanks so much for coming on. And I know you both have such an interest in the criminal justice system and how out of control this whole thing is. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about it.
Yeah, so let's start. Ronald, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing to help put back so much of what's happening in the criminal justice system and bring about justice for others.
Hey, thank you for having me, first of all. This is a great landmark event. I'm truly proud to be part of it. Thanks for inviting me. Just Leadership, as Lynn was saying, we are a nonprofit national organization committed to cutting the prison population in half by 2030. And we seek to do that through our advocacy work, through our leadership, and through our membership. A little bit about me personally, I've once served 27 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections on a wrongful conviction. I went to prison in 1985. I was released in 2012 after the federal courts reversed my conviction. So I have a personal interest in Ross's case because my case was reversed on prosecutor misconduct. And from what I know of Ross's case and what I've read and what I've heard, that there's been a lot of prosecutor misconduct in his case. So me personally, I have a personal invested interest in Ross's case. And we as an organization also believe that we should invest in people over prisons.
I think so.
Absolutely.
Right on. Yeah, very important. Well, Ronald, I have to ask you, you say you're from Michigan. I'm also from Michigan, born and raised there. Where are you from in Michigan?
I'm born and raised in Flint, Michigan, but I live in Detroit currently.
Ah, I understand. Well, I'm from Jackson.
Hey.
They don't let us out very often.
Hey, well,
and people from Michigan would understand that. It's where we have Southern Michigan prison, right?
Yeah, I was in Jackson for 15 years and they wouldn't let me out. Yeah.
No, I understand. Understand. Well, that's great. Well, there's a lot. Now, Jason, we want to hear from you as well. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in the criminal justice system and helping to bring about what needs to be done.
Sure. No, my name is Jason Pye. I've been at FreedomWorks for about 2 years. And as Lynn mentioned before, I met her at Freedom Fest in July. I had just finished a panel on criminal justice reform when she approached me. We talked about Ross and his case. I already had some passing knowledge about his case because I'm an avid reader of Reason magazine. I'm not an expert, but part of my job here at FreedomWorks is criminal justice reform, both at the state and federal levels. We've advocated for criminal justice reform mainly because it is fiscally responsible, but also because of the human cost of the criminal justice system. 2.2 million prisoners nationwide, $80 billion a year, all across all levels of government. The system doesn't work. Mandatory minimum sentences don't work. This has been proven by a number of studies that are out there showing that they don't deter criminals from committing crimes. So we have that interest in it because of that across the board. And so we advocate for sentencing reforms for low-level nonviolent offenders, diversion programs for people who have addictions so they can break out of their addiction and become productive tax-paying members of society. as well as reforms in prisons so people can learn education skills and work training skills and become productive citizens outside the prison walls. And then also reentry reforms like ban the box and record sealing and expungement so they can seek opportunities, second chances when they leave prison. So that's kind of where we come at it from. We've seen the efforts of state work, like in Texas and in Georgia. 32 states now have passed some sort of justice reinvestment initiative. We believe more states are going to be moving on that in the upcoming state legislative sessions. And we are also urging Congress to pass legislation to reform the federal prison system, which currently has a little under 200,000 prisoners, but costs taxpayers almost $7 billion a year, which is the largest department inside the Justice Department. So there are ample rooms for reforms, and we want to help push those through. Doesn't look like it's going to happen this year, but we're hoping it happens next year, even under a Republican administration. So that's what we're going to be pushing for.
Wow. You know, I'm learning so much today, and I didn't know that about the federal criminal justice system. I don't even quite understand why we have one. I thought it was up to the states. But one of the things that I'm really engaged in is this whole effort, because I go to the prison. I visit Ross. I've gotten to know the families. I've gotten to know the children. And 2.5 million children in the United States have an incarcerated parents. What is that going to do? What kind of snowball effect is that going to have? And I talked to people in the prison, and you know, one mom was saying, you know, my kids had straight A's before this happened, and now they're failing and I'm having all this trouble. And these people are trying to keep their lives together. And these are not violent people. These are not threats to society. Over 60%, and correct me if I'm wrong, I read this, that over 60% of the prison population is nonviolent drug offenders. These people need to be with their families.
Yeah.
And so anyway, you guys can talk more about that, but I'm just saying it's really dear to my heart, and it's really part of my life. I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
And so we stick together, and we get to know each other, and we care about each other, and we help each other. But it's just such a struggle. It's so tough. And to see these people dealing with this they're not statistics. They are human beings. These are families, and they are being destroyed by the drug war, by this criminal justice system. And it's an outrage for a country like the United States of America to have more of its citizens in cages than any nation in history, and I believe any nation on earth today. So anyway.
Yeah, Ronald, you experienced that firsthand. What are your thoughts?
Wow, that's a very profound statement. As Lynn was talking, I was thinking about what a retired federal judge, Nancy Gertner, she had said. I read something she was saying that we have learned from over 40 years in the failed war on drug that incarceration does not prevent drug use or sales. And even if it did, there's absolutely no evidence that a life sentence, especially a life sentence without parole, would deter that crime. And you spoke to the impact on the community. Being someone from the urban community, I can tell you firsthand the devastating impact it had when we remove family members from that community. Our communities are based on the foundations of family. And we remove members from the family, from the community for a very extended period of time, then you weaken the fabric of society. We are all less safe. We are all less stable. We are all less secure in our homes and in our property when you do that. And as far as this whole notion of, you know, that the government has, that we want to impose on people's freedoms on the internet or whatever have you. And I reflect back on Benjamin Franklin. I think Benjamin Franklin said, those who would sacrifice privacy for security would lose both and deserve neither. We have a similar situation here.
Right. By the way, Nancy Gertner also signed on to the amicus brief challenging that barbaric sentence. And also, you know, Jason, you had said you're, you know, working at reforming the federal system. One of the outrages of the federal system is that they stopped having parole in the 80s. And so this gives nobody in there a second chance, nobody a chance to make restitution. And do you see any hope in changing that?
Jason?
I hope so. I mean, there are pieces of legislation at the federal level. The Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act, and then also the Recidivism Risk Reduction Act that would allow prisoners to earn time credits provided they demonstrate a low risk of recidivism. That way they can earn up to serve their like a quarter of their sentence in a halfway house or under home confinement. It's not. That is one positive of the bills that are working through, in addition to the sentencing reforms that other pieces of legislation bring. But one thing I want to touch on, you were talking about children and the problems in communities, and there's an indictment of the criminal justice system across at state and federal level when Sesame Street has an entire series dedicated to children who have a parent who is incarcerated.
Oh my God!
Really?
Sesame
Street has a whole series dedicated to that?
What?
Yes, they do, and that's I think if I recall correctly, there was a colloquy on the Senate floor last March between Cory Booker and Senator Mike Lee, Jeff Flake, and I think Dick Durbin, and they all talked about these issues. And that was one of the things that was mentioned. In addition to, there was a study, and I don't remember the name of the study, but Mike Lee quoted from it pretty extensively. And you're just talking about the people we incarcerate typically come from communities that don't have a lot of power, they don't have a lot of representation, and they're filled with crime and drugs. And once they go into prison, they come out of prison, they go right back into those communities where there isn't opportunity. Their communities are still ravaged by crime and drugs. And the only thing they can do, because they can't go out and get a job because of the cloud that a criminal record brings, is they go back to the life they once knew. And then they just become that vicious cycle of crime and violence that we see in many of these communities across the country. So, and that's why we are advocating for reform at the federal level. I mean, FreedomWorks believes that this is a necessity just from the fiscal perspective, in addition to the human cost of our criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just also want to say, and maybe you can speak to this, both of you, is the money that is being made with this whole system. And from my point of view, if you're making money off of human beings and they're the inventory, that's human trafficking. And I just can't see any justification for this. Can you comment?
Ronald, any ideas on that?
Wow. Yes. I mean, the cost of incarceration is just astronomical. And around the country, almost every state in the union that has a major MDOC, Department of Corrections, their corrections budget is usually first or second highest budget in the state. In Michigan, for example, 2/3 of our tax dollars go to incarceration. We have over a $2 billion a year correctional budget, and the education budget is much less than that. Wow. So I think that's one way to look at it. But the reason we don't get much traction on the cost effect of it, because the government doesn't care what it costs, because it's taxpayers' dollars that pay for it.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not coming out of their pocket; it's coming out of the taxpayers' pocket. So we need to put that message out there and help change the hearts and minds on how to go at that and how to redirect those resources, like I say, to put people first instead of prisons.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, Ronald, let me put you on the spot here, because there's some changes that definitely need to be made. You have a unique insight because you were there. You were part of that at SMP. They're on Cooper Street in Jackson. I know about that. Yes, and you saw what is there. If, let's say, incoming President-elect Trump said, okay, we've got problems with this. He brought you, Ronald, to the White House. What would you recommend that we do to start turning things around?
Wow, great question. Great question. The first, that's two things I would do. I think the first one, which is near and dear to my heart, is parole reform.
Yes.
The sentences are so long and crazy that, and our parole boards have been like a stopgap to letting people out. And one thing about these sentences, we don't, and just leadership, we do not. We hope to get accountability. We want people to have accountability. We're not saying people shouldn't be punished for what they did. We're saying that prisons are being overused. And so the parole reform, if you would have meaningful reform, meaningful review of each and every person coming up, and base their review on the rehabilitation they have done from the time they went in to the time they got out, instead of on the nature of the crime, then you could reduce the population quite a bit by that. And on the other end, I think I would tell Mr. Trump, or whoever the president happened to be, is to increase the programming, like the Pell Grant, expand the Pell Grant program, because we know the education makes people better. When you know better, you do better. Increase the education, increase the opportunities for people coming out. We have programs here right now in Michigan that prepare people to be released, and they get them in jobs when they get out, they get them housing when they get out, and it reduces the recidivism rate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good. Well, Jason, let me hear from you. Same question. You've got an opportunity now. President-elect Trump brings you to the White House and says, okay, what do you recommend we do to deal with this from a real-world situation?
At the bare minimum, you have to pass one of the two bills in the Congress right now, either the Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act or the Sentencing Reform Act in the House. The Sentencing Reform and Corrections Act is in the Senate. And in the House, you have the package that has the Sentencing Reform Act, the Recidivism Risk Reduction Act. Both those deal with sentencing and prison reform. You have to pass one of those packages of bills at the bare minimum. There's so much we can do at the federal level to get the ball rolling. Now, we have to understand also that these are just first steps. There's a lot more that we can do to reform the criminal justice system. As we mentioned, reentry reforms are incredibly important. So we have to place an emphasis on those. But ban the box at the federal level. Cory Booker has a bill, I think it's the Fair Chance Act, which would be good. I mean, it prohibits the largest employer in the country, which is the federal government, from putting that criminal history box on employment applications. You have other pieces of legislation, such as the REDEEM Act, which allow low-level nonviolent offenders to have their record sealer expunged. That's another quality piece of legislation that Congress could move. This is a real opportunity, and it's a real opportunity for Republicans, especially to take the lead on this, and as they've done in the states, and they really should embrace it and move on it. If Vice President-elect Mike Pence, during the one of the vice presidential debates, or the only vice presidential debate, I should say, advocated for criminal justice reform. I'm hoping he's getting in the president-elect's ear and whispering that to him and saying, "Hey, we need to move on this, because we can bring the successes of the states to the federal level and make our federal prison system and correction system work better."
I'm so glad to hear that Mike Pence feels that way, and it is something that crosses the aisle. That there's people on both sides of the aisle that see the problem from all different angles, and there's nothing good about it. So, great. I'm glad to hear some good news, and I really support, those reforms. They're really necessary.
It's one of the real areas of consensus we have in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, exactly. But let me ask both of you a question, because I know if in the real world, the political situation, as soon as they say, we're going to try this, we're going to make it a little different, we're going to allow more parole, many people are going to come back and say, you're being, here's that term, soft on crime. We're going to get tougher. And they think, okay, we're just going to get tougher and make harsher sentences, and that'll do it. How do you deal with the political reality of that? Ronald, what do you think should be done?
Well, I mean, the slogan "tough on crime" is that they should be more concerned about being tough on results. Tough on crime.
Exactly.
Yes.
The whole tough on crime notion is a misnotion. That's something to scare the people into doing, to pass these draconian laws that they want to pass. We should be more responsible about crime. And we could be much responsible in how we deal with people that's incarcerated, how we pass reasonable laws to deal with people that's incarcerated. We could knock this prison population down in no time. And to say that, you being soft on crime, and I don't even know how to even respond to that. It's just such a ludicrous notion. Because you giving people, number one, a second chance. You basing it on the redemptive quality that humans automatically have within them, and you basing it on their behavior since they've been here. We're not telling you to release the person that just walked into prison. Not the people that've been there. They've gone through the heart and mind change necessary to be good citizens and come home. So I would say that that we should be tough on results more than being tough on crime.
That's a good.
I like the way you put that, being tough on results. Jason, how would you react to the people saying, "Hey, you're being soft on crime"?
I think the criminal justice reforms that have been passed, especially at the state level, have shown that sort of narrative to be completely false. I mean, Texas is not known for being a soft on crime state, but yes, it has passed the most comprehensive criminal justice reforms, maybe outside of Georgia. In 2007, rather than build new prisons, they opted to invest in recidivism reducing programming. And to date, the crime rate has fallen by 24%, while prison populations have dropped by 12%. If that doesn't show what works, I don't know what does. And I think you can also argue that because of the rehabilitative programming that come with these justice reinvestment initiatives, they actually demand more accountability than simply locking someone up and throwing away the key. I point to Texas's 24% drop in crime, while at the same time seeing a 12% reduction in prison populations as the results of that. And also, you just look at the number of states who have also jumped on to criminal justice reform as a policy initiative. Utah has done it. Oklahoma is now doing it under Governor Mary Fallin. Georgia, again, has done this, and Georgia is my home state, so I'm quite proud of what the work my governor has done there, Nathan Deal. We're even seeing states like South Carolina. Alabama has done some minor work. They have a lot further to go to reduce prison overcrowding there. In some prisons, the overcrowding is as much as 300%. There's a lot of work to be done, and hopefully more states will keep doing this and look past the rhetoric, especially the rhetoric that was talked about during the most recent election. This rhetoric that's definitely not true. Crime rates have been falling substantially since the 1990s. I think we've seen a 49% drop in gun-related homicides and a 75% drop in gun victimization since 1993. That's research from Pew and the federal government. The Bureau of Justice Statistics has backed that up as well. So we're safer than we've been at any point since the 1970s. We have seen states that have done criminal justice reform see their crime rates drop, their prison populations drop, and I think we should look to that and keep doing this. And other states hopefully will join up in the coming months as legislatures begin their work.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate what both of you are doing. You're out there and dealing with some really thorny issues and giving some real world perspective on how to do it. You want to find out how people can get in touch with you? Ronald, start with you. How does someone get in touch with you?
You can get in touch with me at ronald@justleadership.org. JustLeadershipUSA. RONALD@JUSTLEADERSHIPUSA.org.
I love it. And I like the way you spell that too. That's real good. Makes it easier for those who'll be catching this via audio. I like that. My fellow Michigander, I commend you on that. Yeah,
Can I
so
make one
Jason,
last
yourself.
statement?
Ronald, did you have something?
Yeah, I said, can I make one last
Oh,
statement?
sure, please do.
Yeah,
Because I like your haircut too.
Hey, thank you. You got matching haircuts. Hey, Lynn, I was going to say that if we could, Just Leadership's goal is to cut the population in half by 2030. If we could have 1 more million mothers just like you, we could get there.
Awesome.
Yes,
Thank you.
indeed.
Well, let's get them. Let's get those mothers. I've talked to lots of mothers. I'm
Great.
amazed how many people are impacted by this. I meet them all the time now.
Absolutely.
A lot of people. So yeah, let's stay in touch, okay?
Thank you. Yeah, let's do
Jason,
that.
how do we get in touch with you?
Sure, you can reach me one of a couple ways. My email address is jpie@freedomworks.org. That's P as in Paul, Y, E as in Edward. Or you can find me on Twitter @Pie, P as in Paul, Y, E as in Edward. And Len, thank you so much for putting this together. And I really appreciate everything you're doing, and send Ross our best.
I will.
And we'll keep him in our thoughts and keep you in our thoughts as you guys keep pushing forward.
Same to you. Your work is great, and we really support it. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Jason.
Hey, we're high-fiving both
Yeah.
you guys here
Awesome.
virtually. High five. Yes, indeed. There we are.